Welcome back to our daily Bible study. I am Matthew Gage, pastor at Faith Baptist Church in Decatur, Texas, and today we will be in Genesis chapter number 16. And we're continuing dealing with the life of Abraham, still called Abram at this point. And in this chapter number 16, we'll be dealing with a lapse of faith on Abram's part, probably the greatest lapse of faith that he had in doubting God's promise and then trying to find a human solution to fulfilling the promises of God. And let's look at that here today in Genesis chapter number 16. Verse number 1, Now Sarai, Abram's wife, bare him no children, and she had an handmaid, an Egyptian, whose name was Hagar. Now, we talked about already Abraham's sojourn into Egypt when there was a famine in the land. Maybe it's conjecture, but I know a lot of people correlate these two, that perhaps they picked up Hagar down there. I've seen a few references to maybe a tradition that she may have been a princess or somehow related, maybe a daughter of the Pharaoh. Not really sure about those. The scripture, as far as I can remember, is silent on that. I don't think it says that in this chapter. But there are some traditions out there that lead and actually will tie this back to that earlier trip into Egypt. If so, that makes that mistake even greater. Verse number 2. And Sarai said unto Abram, Behold, now the Lord hath restrained me from bearing. I pray thee, go in unto my maid. It may be that I may obtain children by her. And Abram hearkened to the voice of Sarai. And Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar her maid, the Egyptian, after Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan, and gave her to her husband Abram to be his wife. Once again, I want to point out, this is, I guess, the second time we've dealt with polygamy in the scriptures. This is something that happened in the old days, in ancient times, but it is not something that God ever, I think, intended for man. I think he did intend for one man and one woman, and there's no instances where having a multitude of spouses works out well in the scriptures, and this is going to be another one of those. So here we go, verse number 4. And he went in unto Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised in her eyes. And Sarai said unto Abram, My wrong be upon thee. I have given my maid unto thy bosom. And when she saw that she had conceived, I was despised in her eyes. The Lord judge between me and thee. So as soon as Hagar, is now expecting a child, now she feels that she is greater than her former mistress. So leading to all kinds, I'm sure, family trouble inside, and we'll see that as this develops, and it will continue on in this chapter as we deal with this and in the following chapters. It does not lead to a good situation. Verse 6. But Abram said unto Sarah, Behold, thy maid is in thy hand, do to her as it pleaseth thee. And when Sarah dealt hardly with her, she fled from her face. So Sarah, is now pouring out retribution, I guess you could say, on Hagar, so much so that Hagar has fled away. She's run away. Verse number 7 we begin. This is an interesting little story here that happens. Verse 7 says, And the angel of the Lord found her by a fountain of water in the wilderness, by the fountain in the way to Shur. So I believe she's heading south, back down towards Egypt, back home. Now this figure that appears to her is called the angel of the Lord here. Now this is a very interesting figure, and you'll see this name pop up a few different times. And is this an angel? Well, you go by the name. Angel means a messenger. So is this a messenger from the Lord? Who is this? Is this an angelic being that we commonly would think of? In this case, and in a few other cases here, I have doubts. And you say, well, then who is it? I think that this actually is God himself coming down. And specifically, I would say that this is Jesus Christ. I think this is a pre-incarnate appearance by Jesus. And there's a handful of those in the scriptures. And I think this is one of them, and I have some various thoughts on that. I don't want to spend time and chase that rabbit on. But this figure comes as not just a messenger, because they're going to talk with authority. Angels don't talk with authority. Angels say, the Lord said do this. This figure in a minute is going to say, I will. So speaking with authority, speaking with power, that's not something angels do. So it's this figure is speaking with a greater authority and greater power than an angel normally does. So let's get in this. That'd be something fun. If you want some homework, that'd be something fun for you to study out. Verse 8, and he said, Hagar, Sarai's maid, whence comest thou, and whither wilt thou go? And she said, I flee from the face of my mistress Sarai. Verse 9, and the angel of the Lord said unto her, return to thy mistress, and submit thyself under her hands. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, I will multiply thy seed exceedingly, that it shall not be numbered for multitude. So here's what I was talking about. Now this angel is saying, I will do this. Well, angels don't do that. Angels don't do this kind of authority. This sounds a lot like what God was saying to Abraham before. So I think that this is God that is speaking to her here. Verse number 11, and the angel of the Lord said unto her, behold, thou art with child, and thou shalt bear a son, and thou shalt call his name Ishmael, which means God shall hear, by the way, because the Lord hath heard thy affliction. And he will be a wild man. His hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him, and he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren. So she tells him, you're going to bear a child. It's going to be a son. Name him Ishmael, because God's heard your plea, heard your cry right here. And talks a little bit about Ishmael's nature, and this nature of kind of being an outsider, nomadic. Those kind of things kind of come into this description, and those will bear out in him and also in his descendants, we shall see. And I didn't mention that before when we talked about verse number 10, how many descendants that Ishmael will have. There'll be innumerable, and you can trace that down, family tree stuff. So many people there in the Middle East will trace their heritage back to Ishmael. Let's see here. Where are we at? Verse number 13. And she called the name of the Lord that spake unto her, that thou God seest me. For she said, have I also here looked after him that seeth me? Wherefore the well was called Beer Lahai Roi. Behold, it is between Kadesh and Bered. So as Moses writing this, he's saying, hey, you can go visit this well. I wonder if Moses himself, maybe when he was, spending 40 years in the wilderness tending sheep with his father-in-law, I wonder if maybe he had visited here and knew this place and knew this story. So anyway, we have that in the verse number 15. And Hagar bare Abram a son, and Abram called his son's name, which Hagar bare, Ishmael. And Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bare Ishmael to Abram. So we have here, like I say, we have here Abram having a lapse of faith, and Sarai kind of behind that, and offering up this human solution to the problem of having an heir that God had promised, and has one through his wife's former servant, slave, maid, Hagar, who's now elevated to being a wife, and the problems that come out of that, and these problems are going to continue. But here's the firstborn son to Abraham, and it is Ishmael. And we will deal with that as we go on through the fallout from that over the next few chapters. So I don't want to get too far ahead in the story as we continue on this Bible study. So anyway, I think we'll call that good for today. I appreciate you watching. I hope it's been a help and a blessing to you.